In this presentation, I will give you an overview of technology in the Roaring Fork School District. An important component of this overview is the Technology Audit conducted by Howard Pittler of McREL. I will summarize the report, provide some background, and describe progress we've made on his recommendations. Rather than recount the recommendations one by one, I will present them in relation to each other. Looking at the recommendations in relation to one another, we can formulate more comprehensive solutions and a coordinated response. In addition to looking at the recommendations in this manner, I've described a rationale for 21st century learning. Mentioned in the audit, 21st century learning provides the structure and direction for instructional technology and can provide guidance for future discussions and plans. The three primary areas addressed in the technology audit were equity of access, professional development, and roles and responsibilities. Equity of access was defined as access to working, up-to-date hardware, software, and online resources. Mention was made to reconsider the ways funds are distributed for technology, encourage students to bring their own technology to school, and survey parents to determine the level of access students have at home. There was a recommendation to rethink professional development, to provide training related to content as well as skills, to provide content training that emphasizes 21st century skills, as described by the International Society for Technology and Education, and to integrate technology into the content area learning objectives. Under roles and responsibilities, it was recommended that we articulate in writing who is responsible for each aspect of support, for both teachers and hardware. Clarify expectations for teachers integrating technology and the consequences for not using it. Increase coverage for support, and engage students in support. I'm highlighting 21st century learning as a fourth component of the audit. While only briefly mentioned in the report, 21st century learning has the potential to guide our desire to integrate technology with instruction. A 21st century learning model has the potential to influence our approach in each of the recommended areas. If the audit recommendations are going to be followed, if we intend to create a vision for and with our students, the recommendations need to have a focus. Our focus should be aligned with our desire to prepare students to be inquisitive, innovative, resourceful, critical thinkers. While there may be other approaches, the most commonly accepted skills framework is 21st century learning. Given the almost universal reference to 21st century learning in the literature, in core content standards, and educational and brain research, it makes sense to employ this model. An integrated view of the recommendations reveals that the goals are complementary. Looking at these recommendations one by one, it's easy to get overwhelmed, searching for solutions in isolation. Looking at them in concert, we can find leverage in our solutions. Equity of access is directly related to professional development. For without training, access is barred, and without tools, we can't train. Professional development prepares us for our role in the school system and to be responsible in our use. We need to select and master tools appropriate to our role and meet the expectations of our role. To illustrate this connection, consider the dependencies. Finally, our roles and responsibilities should define the type of access we require, the tools we need to do our job. We need access to tools that match our responsibilities, and we need to encourage leaders who understand and model the tools. To illustrate this connection, consider the dependencies for equity of access. Barriers to access could be dependent upon a tool's availability, the physical access to a reliable tool. But just as important as physical access is competence on the part of the user. As we provide access and training, we need to set a level of expectation. Expensive tools deserve a level of responsibility for learning. 21st century skills provide a basis for this conversation. It is fundamental to the recommendations, answering what sort of access do teachers and students need in order to engage with learning at the 21st century level? What sort of training is required to support the tools we value? And what sort of support and leadership do we need, and who is responsible for delivering it? One of the complaints cited in the report is the lack of clear expectations within the district. With clear expectations, professional development and support will be misguided. Without clear expectations, access, professional development, and support will be misguided. 21st century skills can be a useful model for defining the overriding purpose of technology in the Roaring Fork School District, establishing expectations. Fortunately, there are models for accomplishing this. We can engage stakeholders in a conversation for defining our approach. Let's look at 21st century fluencies in detail. 21st century fluencies provide a model for learning and teaching, relevant to professional development for adults and the instruction of students, that will provide enhanced understanding and retention of content by engaging learners in higher level thinking, and that is aimed at fluency, emphasizing practice. The fluencies are solution fluency, creativity fluency, collaboration fluency, media fluency, and information fluency. These 5 fluencies have been developed into a process of teaching by Crockett, Jukes, and Churches, described in detail in their book, Literacy is Not Enough, 21st Century Fluencies. Their book includes examples for integrating them into the curriculum. So what makes 21st century skills so important to our students? The skills have come into prominence as a reflection of technological, cultural, and economic changes. Innovations in technology, the doubling of speed of devices, the internet, the shrinking form of technology, the advances in information management, and the globalization of commerce and information are changing the requirements for survival. As a result, the skills appear in the work of futurists, entrepreneurs, technologists, leaders in education, state and federal advisors, and business people. You will find this model reflected in Bloom's taxonomy, the state and national core content standards, and the International Society of Technology and Education Standards. Here's a short clip of Lee Crockett talking about his book, Literacy is Not Enough. The excerpts are from an interview with Steve Hargadon, where he describes the skills and fluencies in a nutshell, what they are, how we can personalize the skills for our stakeholders, and how to integrate them into our teaching.
For us, we always start with the question of what is it that you want for your students? Start with the big question. What is it you're trying to achieve? What is the purpose of what we're trying to do? And when we start talking about those endpoints and start talking about the fact that those endpoints are in jeopardy, at that point, people start becoming open to the fact that, well, if those endpoints are in jeopardy, then perhaps we need to make some change. So I usually find coming at it from the back end and working towards the front is more helpful. That global list that everyone comes up with is from asking any group of stakeholders, or whether it's parents or whether it's administrators or whether it's teachers, what are the skills that are essential for life in the 21st century that your students are going to need when they graduate? What are those things? And that list that everyone comes up with is exactly the same. That students need to be able to problem solve. Problem solving is the one that comes up very, very first all the time. Analytical thinking, that students need analytical thinking skills, that they need to be creative, that creativity is an essential skill for survival in the 21st century, that they're able to communicate, and not just with text, but in multiple multimedia formats. and that they have to be able to collaborate with real and virtual partners in real and virtual environments. And the last one that everyone comes up with, that is the one that's most important to me, I think, is really this area that I just call ethics, action, and accountability, which really has to do more with items of personal responsibility, fiscal responsibility, empathy, global awareness, environmental awareness, digital citizenship, and so forth. So this list becomes pretty standard. The reason that we've come up with the 6 Ds and so forth, for solution fluency, the 6 Ds is this, Steve. The problem that I have is that educators love to talk. And we love to theorize, and we love to debate, and then we don't do anything. So, we have this discussion, and we say, yes, kids need problem-solving skills, and yeah, that's great. And we move on. Yes, kids need problem-solving skills, but nothing happens. And that's the frustration for me. I look at it and I say, well, what are those problem-solving skills? How do you develop them? What do they look like? How can you teach them? Or do we just kind of hope these themselves? So the problem-solving skills. That turned from a concept of what is problem, or that students need to be able to develop problem-solving skills, into solution fluency, a structured process for how you solve problems. Analytical thinking, that translates into solution fluency, but also into information fluency, a structured process for how you access, authenticate, analyze, and apply information. So that's analytical thinking. It translates directly into information fluency. Creativity, that moves directly over to creativity fluency, and communicate, which was another thing that stakeholders come up with. That turns into media fluency, which is how is media used to shape our thinking, and how can we communicate our message through multiple multimedia formats. Collaboration fluency is directly related to collaborate, which is the item that the stakeholders always come up with. And the last one, ethics, action, and accountability, become our background. That becomes global digital citizenship as a framework. One of the conversations that comes up with people all the time is, when we talk about 21st century skills, for example, people say, well, isn't a skill a skill? A skill is just that. It's a skill. But skills have changed over time, and that's really how that chapter sets up. Why are there skills now that are more important than there used to be, and why do we need something different? Why is there a new set of skills? So that chapter really is just set up to talk about the fact that there are skills that become obsolete. Things like operating an elevator, those are obsolete skills. And as we move forward, we have skills that have differentiated emphasis or more emphasis in the digital generation's lives in the 21st century. And then arguably what we present as the fluencies is a discussion that there are an additional set of skills that we need to survive in the 21st century, which are these things that our stakeholders have identified for us. And the reason that we don't call them skills, the reason that we call them fluencies, is because we're talking about the fundamental tools that are essential for people to survive in the culture of the 21st century. And for us, being able to do that at a literacy level, being able to be relatively comfortable with them, but is not enough. To us, we needed to go deeper than that. These things need to be unconscious processes. They need to be fluencies. So really that chapter is a discussion of how skills have changed over time and why there is a new set of skills, what those skills are, and how we need to up the bar and focus those skills at the literacy level as opposed to, or the fluency level as opposed to the literacy level. So yes, there is certainly some challenges that happen when you make the change. In our experience, the challenge comes when you try to do this too quickly, when you try to go to 100% 21st century learning, process-based learning, project-based learning, starting tomorrow morning, this is the way we're going to do it. That is a very, very dangerous thing to do. And there needs to be needs to be thought about a little bit more. We start off with one lesson per unit, then 1 unit per term, and so forth, and we make this shift gradually over a period of time, because not just the teachers, but the students also have to get comfortable with a new way of doing things. I mean, we're asking them to think, which is not something that they normally get asked to do. And believe me, they struggle with it when they first are presented with that challenge.
Experts say the same thing about 21st century learning skills. Students need experience in solving problems with tools of creation, not just consumption. They need to have skills to work independently and in collaboration with others. They need to understand and be good consumers of media and information, able to separate truth from fiction. Central to the fluencies, students need to understand their place in the global environment and develop responsible behavior with digital tools. As Crockett mentioned, 21st century learning requires time and effort. It's very ambitious to think that we can deliver content while teaching higher-level thinking. His book provides a guide for doing just that, for student and teacher development. The 21st century learning fluencies are integral to each of the recommendations, so let's take a closer look at each of the recommendations of the Tech Audit. First, equity of access. Equity of access was defined as access to working, up-to-date hardware, software, and online resources. Access included bandwidth, wired to the internet, bandwidth, wireless in the building, hardware and software, and online resources. Mention was made to reconsider the way funds are distributed for technology, to encourage students to bring their own technology to school, and to survey parents to determine the level of access students have at home. Looking at access in relation to the other recommendations and through the 21st century lens, let's ask, what tools do we need for 21st century learning? Do we intend to provide access to teachers and students? How can we match our purchases to professional development and 21st century fluencies? In more detail, we can ask, what does access look like for students and for adults? What sort of learning activities promote competence for students and adults? What are the professional development and curriculum opportunities? How do we encourage responsibility and autonomy for personal learning goals? Can we match the role and the needs of the student or adult? The Pittler Report recommends action to improve equity of access in some particular ways. First, I will review the issues and proposals for wired bandwidth and for bandwidth for wireless. In the audit, there were complaints about the slow internet and unreliability of the connections. First, wired bandwidth. Wired connections are basic to all network access, local, internet, and wireless. Since we began networking computers in 1996, we've been in a continual process of upgrades in the schools, between the schools, and out to the internet. On this map, you can see an overview of our network, including our latest plan for increasing bandwidth to the internet. The Up Valley schools, Basalt and Carbondale, have fewer options for bandwidth. They're at the top of that screen. Until a few years ago, we were reliant on Quest and CenturyLink to provide this service. Last year, we improved the method of connection and significantly increased our bandwidth to average 15 megabits per second. The latest plan would increase the speed to more than twice as much, in some cases 4 times the speed. Despite the challenges of rural infrastructure, we found a way to more than double our speed this summer, from 10 to 20 to 50 to 100 megabits per second. The monthly increase from $4,700 to $6,450 is a difference of $1,750 a month. Our internet connection is a separate service, one that will benefit all schools equally, Up Valley and Down Valley. With an increase in funding of $500 a month, we can increase our speed by a factor of 4, from 25 to 100 megabits per second. We know that future growth and changes are inevitable, so we will continue to look for ways to increase bandwidth and decrease cost. Now for wireless. I've just completed an RFP process for increasing the wireless access in our schools. In the past year, we've run into a ceiling for adding wireless devices. Given the evolution of mobile computing including the decrease in costs for mobile devices, increasing wireless capabilities, a wise investment. We're at a point where we either need to stop buying any new wireless devices or increase our capacity. The initial RFP proposal, improving wireless access to 7 schools. After selecting a vendor, we negotiated an alternative plan to improve access to all of our schools. To illustrate the magnitude of the proposal, I've selected a single school, Glenwood Springs Middle School. Here you see the floor plan. The red circles indicate the current location of wireless access points. Based on the requirements of our proposal to the vendor, Meraki suggested an increase in coverage from 8 to 28 access points. If we choose to fund this project, the other schools would be provided with this same level of access, density of wireless access points. This spreadsheet illustrates the annual and one-time costs of this solution. The top line is the price for upgrading 7 schools. The second line details the price for all 11 schools. In the audit, hardware, software, and online resources are included under the heading of access. While bandwidth and mobile access through wireless are essential, hardware and software and online resources include the applications for bringing content directly to the students and teachers. In the audit, under the heading of hardware and software, there was a suggestion to allow students to bring personal computers to school, a complaint about the unreliability of hardware and not enough support, a comment that technology is unevenly distributed, with some schools allowing student access while others only provide access for teachers. Regarding online resources, there is a desire to access more resources online and a recognition that desirable teacher training may be found online. As we consider these comments, it's worth recognizing that we increase the number of computers in each of our schools at about 30 per year. At the same time, we retire about 30 computers a year at 5 to 7 years old. Current funding would not be adequate to achieve one-to-one computing, that is, a single computer for every student, until and unless we find less costly ways to provide access or allocate more funds. We will be holding steady at the level of access we have. A significant proportion of the cost of hardware, software, and online resources is in implementation and long-term support, training, and tech support. Like an iceberg, the initial purchase is the most visible, but the full commitment lies under the surface. Online resources are readily available. Some are fee-based, but many teacher learning communities are free, collaborative communities where teachers support each other to develop 21st century learning approaches. So how can we manage the hidden costs of our hardware and software adoption? How can we ensure that our adoption meets our needs? And how can we connect our vision for instruction, our hopes for our students, with the tools of technology? There are steps we can take to improve the likelihood that the tools we select will serve the needs and our vision. Failing to do this, we will be burdened with tools that dissipate our efforts, are mismatched to our purpose, consume our time and money, and frustrate everyone. First, we need to follow developments. When we talk about technology, hardware and software, it's important to acknowledge that changes in technology are as sure as death and taxes. Many observers of technology have predicted the advancement of smaller, faster computer chips, greater capacity hard drives, and faster internet access. We're in the midst of exponential change. Given the acceleration of change in technology, it's imperative that we continually follow developments. Second, we need to clarify our requirements. This selection process should be driven by our vision and an understanding of the requirements we are trying to meet. These requirements need to be spelled out in detail so that we aren't sidetracked by non-essential bells and whistles when we talk to salesmen. Third, we need to compare the choices. Competition for business is intense, and the choices are seldom easily defined. Often a device or software will offer options that are not central to our requirements. This is often where the water gets muddy. The best remedy is a continual reference to our requirements and comparing available products to that standard. Written documentation, demonstrations, and references are useful in making comparisons. Misinformation among competitors is not unheard of. Armed with our requirements and good questions, we can make demonstrations much more useful. Fourth, the field of choices has been narrowed. Hands-on testing matched to requirements Fourth, once the field of choices has been narrowed, hands-on testing matched to our requirements will provide the final verdict for selection. If we intend to increase the reliability and accessibility, thereby addressing the audit recommendations, we need to understand that every adoption is a commitment of time and money, both of which are in short supply. It's really no different than adopting a puppy. Whether it's a free rescue pet or an expensive purebred, the cost of ownership is the same. The question is how we will make our decisions. Will we adopt a knee-jerk manner or one with forethought and focus? Many of the issues with access, professional development, and support can be remedied through a good adoption process. While we could benefit from additional funding for hardware, software, and online resources, defining our purpose and selecting tools that fit that purpose is a revenue creator. While we're on the subject of funding, it's worth summarizing the current sources of our funding. Funding is, of course, a basic requirement for addressing the recommendations. At this time, hardware, software, and online resources are primarily funded through district allocations. Specifically, this covers the cost for network, phones, servers, and other services. School purchases of computers for teachers and students and peripherals is accomplished through per pupil allocation to each school. Additionally, schools allocate funds from local sources to supplement the purchase of computers, software, peripherals, and services. A small percentage of funding is provided by schools who write grants to the Roaring Fork Public Education Foundation and other local sources. The district benefits greatly from the federal E-rate program to offset costs for telecommunications. We receive a discount for the cost of services based on the percentage of students receiving free and reduced lunch. Our percentage has increased from 55% to 68% in 15 years we've been applying. Without these funds, we would not be able to afford the bandwidth we enjoy. As I've stated, there was a recommendation to rethink professional development and define roles and responsibilities. These two areas have some obvious overlap, so I've combined them here. Within the scope of professional development, it was mentioned that we should consider implementing the use of professional learning communities in educational technology and our 21st century learning. Provide training related to instructional content as well as skills. Integrate technology into the content area's learning objectives. Under roles and responsibilities, it was recommended that we articulate in writing who is responsible for each aspect of support and training, increase coverage for support, and define expectations for teachers integrating technology and the consequences for not using technology. The three key questions summarize the recommendations. What skills do we develop? Who is responsible? What do we expect? 21st century skills will help us prioritize professional development objectives. One of the core values within the 21st century framework is developing personal responsibility for learning. If we can develop this norm within our district, collaboration will be much more rich. When teams develop a common level of skill and fluency, support and training becomes much more broadly based and easy to deliver. Without some understanding of 21st century learning and its relevance to the content, we won't be capable of bringing the two into focus. If we're going to model 21st century learning for students and our peers, we need to develop and practice the fluencies. While the audit recommends a rethinking of support and professional development in the Roaring Fork School District, it didn't identify the strengths that could be leveraged in that rethinking. One of these strengths can be found in the people who keep things running, who learn, support, decide, fund, and train our students and staff. Every one of us would agree that too little training has been provided, and we'd all love to play a role in more training. One of the greatest barriers has been time, competition with other important district priorities. As an upstart discipline, we technologists have tried to make our way into the mainstream of instruction. Many of the current technology staff have been dedicated to integrating learning tools into our schools for 15 to 20 years. We represent many grade levels, specialties, and ages. We're administrators, teachers, and classified staff. We've led training on many different topics, both on our own and in collaboration with each other. As a group, we've worked together to create agreements for computer use, set the parameters for content filtering, searched and researched, and supported solutions. In describing technology support, it helps to understand how support is layered. An accepted model for describing this is the tier system. This describes how various levels of people with diverse levels of expertise can support one another. There are 3 levels of service described in the literature. Tier 1 is front-end support. This person determines the issues by analyzing symptoms and figuring out the underlying problems. Tier 2 provides more in-depth technical support than Tier 1. These technicians assist Tier 1 personnel, solving basic technical problems and investigating issues. They confirm the validity of the problem and seek known solutions related to the issue. Tier 3 individuals are experts in the field and responsible for assisting both Tier 1 and Tier 2 personnel, and with research and development of solutions to new and unknown issues. It's important that we remember the talent that we have in our school district and build upon that talent. Here's a brief and general description of the people who provide Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 service. Building techs and media specialists. Our schools use very different models for internal tech support. Each school allocates different amounts of support through per pupil funding. This is determined by building leadership, balancing demands for many different support needs and services. There's no question that schools that establish building support have greater success in promoting technology. That said, the demand for support is always greater than the support available, so building techs and media specialists are very busy people. Most of these staff have multiple responsibilities in their schools. None of them are full-time tech support. All are certified teachers or media specialists. They're integral to the success of technology integration within their school. They confirm technical problems, Tier 1, and provide some higher level support, Tier 2. A few schools have building techs that provide Tier 3 support. Community techs also provide building support. Community techs were hired 4 years ago to provide direct support within the schools. The 3 community techs are dedicated to their community schools in Basalt, Carbondale, and Glenwood. They respond to the priorities set by the building administrator and the building tech. Their primary responsibility is the care and support of the computers and software in the school, providing teachers with reliable and up-to-date tools. They also participate in planning discussions, help with new initiatives, and provide training as time allows. Two of the three ComTechs have been classroom teachers. They are supervised by the technology director. Most of their time is in Tier 2 support. As their skill has increased, they have provided more Tier 3 service. District Tech Support. 3 District Techs provide support, advice, and supervision to the ComTechs. They also support building techs, teachers, maintenance, business staff, and administration. They address the daily issues that arise, as well as providing regular maintenance and updates for the underlying infrastructure of technology. In order to stay ahead of the latest in computer, network, and server developments, they engage with local and virtual experts. They are very involved in planning discussions and in purchasing decisions. 2 of the 3 district techs have been classroom teachers. All have conducted training. They're supervised by the technology director. They provide all levels of service, Tier 1, 2, and 3. As the technology director, I oversee the operations of computer and information systems and telecommunications. I supervise all 6 staff, manage projects and purchases, and lead new initiatives. I participate in leadership team meetings where implementation decisions are discussed and made. I'm supervised by the Assistant Superintendent of Schools and formerly was supervised by the Finance Director. Administration. Administrators are responsible for overseeing building-level decisions for technology, planning, and support. Their technical skill varies. Some are excellent models of 21st century fluency. They are responsible for managing information requiring computer and software expertise. Some are very hands-on with training, while others delegate this responsibility. As a group, administrators discuss and set priorities for district-wide adoption of instructional and assessment tools. They're key to the success of implementation of new initiatives. I hope that I've given you a clear account of the technology audit and an appreciation for the relationship of the recommendations to one another. I hope you have a sense of the potential of 21st century learning fluencies for guiding our learning. The advent and advancement of technology and the opportunities it presents are only limited by our willingness to explore them. The 21st century learning framework can provide encouragement and direction to do just that. It isn't a checklist of skills to complete, but a process to work with, to practice. Technology is set to change our models of learning. It has flipped and revolutionized industries. The most obvious example is the publishing industry. Once contained within a silo of the printing press, publishing is now decentralized and immediate. We all have the means to a worldwide audience. All we lack is the understanding and practice with the tools. There's no reason that education will be immune to these changes. Learning is always available. The only question is whether we intend to participate and whether education, public education, will survive. There are many communities of 21st century learning practice. I invite you to explore these books, websites, and podcasts to learn more. I've provided links here on this page and references here at the end of this presentation. Thank you for listening. I hope this has been helpful.